Hello, my name is Luther Burns, and today I'll be talking about religious expression through Spanish art. So, throughout the history of Spanish art, there have been many masters that have excelled in religious expression. Three of the most notable being Diego Velázquez, Antoni Gaudí, and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Um, these three masters cover three different genres of Spanish art: Diego Velázquez painting, Antoni Gaudí architecture, and Gabriel Marquez literature. The first of these masters I will be discussing is Diego Velázquez, whose genre was painting. He was born in 1599 in Seville's southern part of Spain. Seville was a thriving artistic community, which led Diego to be able to develop his artistic skill at a very young age. He was an apprentice to Francisco Pacheco at the age of 11. This is huge because Francisco Pacheco was the most significant artist and art theorist in Spain at that time. Um, his early paintings modeled those of Caravaggio, uh, another famous Spanish artist at that time. One of his most famous religious paintings was the Immaculate Conception. This was a very early piece of work for him. Um, this painting really showed the doctrine of the Virgin Mary. However, it did not refer to the conception of Jesus whatsoever. The imagery is based off the New Testament. In this painting is part of a two-piece set, this being the first, the second being Saint John of the island of Patmos, which depicts Saint John looking up to this painting. Another famous painting by Diego Velázquez is Christ Contemplated by the Christian Soul. This was painted in 1628. Christ has his hands tied to a column while tools of flagellation, which is whipping, lay around him. The two images are the guardian angel, who is accompanied by a Christian soul in child form. Um, this really is huge because not many artists at this time had um, put so much religious expression into paintings such as this and make them so real as this one does. This was also a controversial painting because it depicts Christ as being Italian, which through every religion anywhere is debated. Overall, his influence on religious expression, his inclusion of religious scenes in the backgrounds of paintings. So in this painting here, you can see that there are two women bowing down to someone in the background. I think this has to do with two women praising what appears to be Jesus Christ, or God holding a baby, which appears to be Jesus. Um, Diego Velázquez was also, before his time, when it came to religious paintings, very few artists had the audacity to paint religion, fearing that the appearance of Christ or other religious figures would be viewed as wrong and they would be punished. Diego Velázquez also promoted freedom of religion and painted many different versions of doctrine through many different religions throughout his lifetime. Antoni Gaudí, better known for his architecture, he was born in a town outside of Barcelona, studied at Escola Técnica Superior de Arquitectura. He was fairly dull at that school, and when he was given his diploma, one of his professors says, "Who knows if we have given this diploma to a nut or a genius? Time will tell." It turned out that they gave it to a genius because he is one of the most famous architects of the 20th century. He had his big break at the Paris exhibition of 1878, where he was then contracted for his next piece, the Sagrada Familia. So as you can tell, the Sagrada Familia will be, if not the most iconic symbol of Christianity, one of the most iconic symbols of Christianity once it's completed. The construction for this project started in 1883, and Gaudi spent the last 16 years of his life devoted to this project. The estimated completion is in 2028. This is the city's most visited attraction. Um, Over millions of people make a trip out to see this each year. Even though it is not completed, it's still a beautiful example of Gaudi's architecture. So Gaudi, um, his appearance started to deteriorate as he was constructing this project. He lived in the basement for the last 5 to 6 years. Um, it was almost like he was dedicating his life to the Lord. He started to look like a homeless person. Many people mistaked him for being a peasant, even though he was this famous architect that was building this magnificent piece of Christianity. Um, his influence on religious expression, he opened the door to other architects looking to be contracted by churches and whatnot. Not many architects have made it big by constructing churches, but this was such a huge project that it received so much attention. My final master I'll be talking about is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He is most known for his literature and his novels. He's a Colombian novelist who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1982 for literature. He was known for using magical realism, which is a literary or artistic genre in which realistic narrative and naturalistic technique are combined with surreal elements of dream and fantasy. As you can tell, this picture is an example of magical realism. There's a ship that fades off into what looks to be a bridge. This is magical realism because um, there are imaginary parts of this painting, but there are some real parts as well. Uh, Gabriel Marquez's religious religious are examples of religious expression through magical realism. He used religious references in fictional stories. Characters would imitate or mimic religious events. Also had stories that depicted life around the world, that being different cultures, different religions. He wasn't focused on just one. He was focused on religion as a whole. Um, So also his influence on religious expression would he really was a proponent of freedom of religious expression, although he was not religious himself. He was not religious himself, but he often referenced different religions in his writings, not saying either one, any such one was correct over the other. He was really for freedom of being able to practice whatever your religion and believing that your religion is right without harming others. He didn't put a bias on any single religion. So, in conclusion, all three masters significantly shed light on religious expression um, during time eras, and places that were hostile toward freedom of religion. This being a lot of areas where these people came from. If you weren't Christian, you were exiled from society, or during time periods, other religions were not as accepted as being Catholic or Lutheran. So here's my works cited. Thanks for listening.